coaching is super deep mindset shifting, making hard changes. And I always say, it's change isn't hard, it's human behavior that's hard to change.
Let's go.
I'm very excited about this. So, for anybody who doesn't know, Gabriel Olguin, he's a pretty cool business coach. He's been helping clients um, just really develop and grow their business and figure out how to step into their full potential, both as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, but also as a person. And I know a lot of people that are being coached by Gabriel personally, and they have nothing but incredible things to say about him. And then I've known Gabriel now, how long? I don't know. Feels like years, feels like forever. But I've known you in a business, from a business sense for at least a couple years, I want to say. And I've been nothing but impressed every time I've heard you speak at an event or you've come into a mastermind or you've shared such gold and you have a very good way of communicating. And I think, anyways, this is a treat. Whoever's listening, we're going to dive into it. And yeah, without further ado, Gabriel, why don't you introduce a little bit about yourself and we'll go from there.
Sure, thank you. Well, I guess been coaching for, I say professionally since 2010. That's when I started coaching for a coaching firm that's globally known. Before that, I was training, mentoring, and coaching, but more like privately for one specific company, a real estate brokerage. So it kind of turned into from doing it for a few people within the office to going nationally and then eventually globally. So that's basically my entire career revolves around coaching in one way or another. So I love doing it, and I just keep moving forward with it.
But you weren't always a coach. So what were you doing? What did your path look like towards where you are now?
Uh, well, I mean, growing up, pretty average person. I didn't have anything major going on. I didn't go to college. It wasn't that was not a conversation in my head or in around the people around me or whatever. So I just kind of went right into the workforce and I just had kind of ran like my first job was delivering flowers for one of the big florists in the United States. It's nationwide, which I was like 16 or 17 or 18, I don't remember. And then just kind of random jobs. I feel like my adult life in career started around like 21 years old, and then I got into real estate around 22 years old. And from there, that's really where I feel like I started to grow up and mature and learn business from an entrepreneur standpoint. So that's kind of I started in real estate, gravitated towards more of like training, coaching, mentoring people, and just little by little, I got more involved in the training, coaching, managing offices, recruiting, even doing license training, and eventually just full time coaching.
Yeah, and what was that for you? So you started in florist delivery. That's cool. Um, I got a funny story about that actually. I ordered from a online florist
Yeah.
last year for Valentine's Day. I was thinking, oh great, let's try this out. This will be great. I actually heard some really positive reviews. I think it was from Dragon's Den. That's
Mhm.
where I heard of the company. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
And uh, the or maybe it was a similar company. I can't remember. It was maybe the same one. So I'm not gonna throw that one under the bus. But the Valentine's Day came and went, and it had guaranteed delivery dates. And so I was like, "Where is this delivery?" It showed up the next day, the day after Valentine's, and I just thought that was so funny. I'm like, "You
Wow.
can't get more wrong than that."
That's
Yeah,
false advertisement.
that is well, I'm assuming they probably got so many orders,
Oh
and
yeah.
the delivery nightmares of trying to make things work on the same day,
Yeah.
would have been probably crazy, but then the flowers arrived wilted, and it was bad.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's one thing I won't do on like holidays, especially like Valentine's Day, is delivery stuff and go out to a restaurant. Like I won't do it. I'm not gonna do it. Not on Valentine's Day or holidays. That's
No,
it's just a rule I just stick to.
it's smart. I've learned my lesson now. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's smart. I've done yeah, but we'll dive into that stuff later. But so for you, uh getting started into that coaching, was there a moment for you when you were going through your career pathway where you thought, okay, this is it. This is something I think I can see myself doing more of? When was that? And if it happened?
I feel like that happened to me during my time working at I worked at the Mike Ferry organization, which is a huge. I mean, most realtors know who that is. So about 7 years into my real estate career, my broker at the time he said, "Hey, Mike Ferry's hiring coaches." I didn't think much of it. I was like, "Oh, cool, good for him." And he says, "No, I think you should apply because nobody knows his system better than you do, as far as I know." So I did, and it was a very long, lengthy, very deep interview process. It took like 6 months. I flew out there like twice to their headquarters in Las Vegas. Eventually got hired. But during that time there that I was there with Mike, I think that's when it didn't click for me. I think over time, I started to, I remember thinking, like, wow, everything I've done up until this point is now being just kind of like put together in my mind. I was kind of like full of knowledge or experience, but when I went there, it really I got like this structure in my mind where I was like, okay, that's where I got the confidence where I can coach anybody. Anybody, it doesn't matter if they're incredibly successful or not or whatever. I think coaching just has more to do with being a great coach and knowing how to coach people, the interaction, and of course the experience. So what I brought to the table to that organization, it was valuable in the sense that everything I learned from them just put me in a position of more confidence, knowing what to do with what I know, other than just knowing it, right? And so that was, I think that's when it happened, was during time, which was about 2010 or 11.
Okay, so you've said a couple things there which are interesting. So let's dive into first that moment, that epiphany where you said it gave you the ability to structure it in your mind.
Hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you could know a lot of things. I'm sure you all know people that have like full of random facts, right? You bring up any topic and they just spit out all kinds of information. If you know that much about something and you're not consulting, then you don't know what to do with it. If you know so much about real estate but you're not doing anything with it, then you don't know how to, you don't know what to do with it. It's, I feel like knowing something and learning it and information, it's all good, it's amazing, but if you don't know what to do with it, you're just gonna sit there. It's like having a Ferrari in storage.
I mean, that makes sense. Like the definition of wisdom is knowing how to apply knowledge. So a plumber is wise at plumbing because they know they can look at a wrench, they can look at PVC piping, and they know how to combine the two to make water flow in the right direction.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's literally the definition of wisdom. And so, but what you're saying there within that structured cognition, I think I've had the same experience where you sometimes I'll go to events and or I'll be working on a problem, and it's like I'll know all the information like you're describing,
Hmm.
but then there's a moment where it just seems to click,
Yeah.
and it's almost like there's a visual roadmap in my mind, and I know that if I do this, this, and this, and this, I will be going in that direction, and it is the most wonderful um, thing when the brain does that because all of a sudden effort you can tell that the effort that you're doing or you're about to doing is going to have direct impact, and so that's why I wanted to click on that too. So because the word structured as well is interesting. So in that, when you were talking about, so you're at the Mike Ferry, what was that like? Did they were they teaching you how to coach? Were you practicing with other people? What was it that was differentiated? Because you had been working closely with people before this, and I know this because we've talked about this in the past,
Yeah.
in your own team, where you have been working closely and just kind of helping people progress. What was it different about Mike Ferry?
I think well, the first month there it was just shadowing. I literally was just plugging in to other coaches that have already been there and listening and taking notes, and that's it for 1 month, just listening. And then I would have my own coaching session with the vice president of coaching at the time, where we would discuss everything that I'm listening to, all my notes, asking questions, and so for 1 month, all I did was listen, take notes, observe, kind of like also observe myself during the calls, just like what's going on in my mind while I'm listening to a coach and a client as a third party, just quietly. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah, uh, and when you're in that, well, leaving that program, what was your next step? What did you do after that?
I went independent for a little while after that. I just kind of started approaching brokerages and, just exactly what any business would do. Start prospecting, start talking to people, presenting myself. I ended up working with a few brokerages, even one of the biggest schools in Las Vegas, because I had to move there to work with them. So I ended up coaching for a school. He was a broker. His name's Teddy Federwitz. He was awesome. He had a big brokerage in Vegas, and he had a school, a licensing school. It was called Key Real Estate School, and then Key Real Estate was the brokerage. So I hit him up. He was a little skeptical. He's like, "Who are you? I never heard of you," kind of thing, And after talking with him for a while, he's like, "I'll tell you what. I'm going to create a class for everybody who gets the license with me and my agents, and you're going to run it." And that's what I did. And that was like my first, after deciding that I'm going to be a professional business coach, that was like my first major, I think, like on my own, totally up to me. He didn't want it. He didn't want to put any time into like creating it or structuring it or nothing. He's like, it's up to you. There's the classroom. It was literally in the classroom. This is like 2012 or something. But yeah, it was good times, man. Good times to kind of flex. Everything I've learned for the past. I think at that point I was already coaching. I really started mentoring, training people on a small scale, like 2004. That's when I was literally taking on new people that were newer than me, even though I was pretty new in the business. I was about 2 years in, but I had advanced so much, I think, because I was learning so much. I was in a coaching program myself, and everything I was learning, I was just repeating to people over and over all day, every day. So I think that's why I progressed so quickly and the skills needed to be an effective coach, right? So going to that with Key Realty School, it was like, okay, game time. You're on your own now. Now it's up to you. These people are showing up for you to lead them, guide them. So yeah, that was a cool experience too.
Huh, that sounds really interesting. Um, what an opportunity too, to be given so much space to really lead something right off the get go like that.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. I felt just really really good about it. I was going into this realty school and you have a classroom. I had like this classroom to myself. It was like being a teacher, kind of. So it was pretty cool.
And then when you're working with someone, let's say um, they have some goals or an objective that they're trying to work towards. What's the things that you would categorize as being sort of the essentials to focus on in your business?
Essentials to focus on when like for a newer person that's just starting out, kind of thing.
It could be a newer person starting out. It could be somebody who's been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
Is there a like a framework that you use that you sort of look and go through and say, okay, these are the key points that I'd want to touch on in business,
Well,
and maybe
I
ask
do.
questions around them?
Yeah, I do have like 20 about 20 21 topics that I revolve around. And that's not just real estate, it's just business in general. Um, so I start by just having a conversation. Usually my first session with people is really getting to know them, getting to know their business, because it's not so much that I want to know what what they're going to tell me. I want to know how they see themselves and their business. It's a simple example is like many people right now think, oh, this is a crazy market, things are slow and whatever. And other people are like, oh my God, there's so many houses for sale. I need to go find a buyer. And that's the first thing I need to do is dive in and understand what their thought process is, because I can just start talking and they are not even like retaining any of it, because the way they think is not at all how I'm delivering it. So I guess like, so for those listening or watching, the point here is like personality styles. So I don't teach them personality styles. I use the ability of knowing personality styles right up front to identify who they are and go deep with that. Because once you learn how somebody learns, it's a lot easier to teach them, or just to communicate and get effective conversation and productive conversation.
Okay, that's super interesting. So I thought you were going to say something about aligning the mindset, but you're starting first with the personality styles, which makes a lot of sense because you want to be able to communicate in a way that is um, that the information process that they're getting is aligning with the way that they, as you said, they learn or they think and they process that.
Yeah.
So, what do you use the disc model? Which model do you use, or do you apply a few?
Yeah, there's two. Disc is one of them. I think that's the more, I guess, popular or well known. Um, Before that, I was using, I forgot the name of it, but they don't call it disc. They call it a driver, amiable person, an expressive, and an analytical, which is basically almost the exact same thing as disc, just different wording. But for the most part, it's very, very similar. So transitioning to disc, it was pretty simple for me, and it's almost, when I talk to people about it, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know, DISC is essentially those four categories that you described, but they're a little bit they're communicated differently, and it's a really interesting profile because it takes a look at um, the brain actually from two spectrums. It takes a look at, okay, what's the way in which you communicate. In the sense, are you a direct communicator? Are you an analytical communicator? Do you need time to process the information? But it also looks at one's temperament. So, are you a calm temperament or are you a anxious temperament? And those things will directly influence how dominant your expressive or your driver traits are in in how you communicate, especially when you're in a stressful environment, like a work stressful environment or a stressful home environment, and they will translate very differently depending if you're in a place where you're solely responsible for the outcome or you're working within a team dynamic. So it's a very fascinating it's a very, very fascinating profile test because it's communicating a lot about who we are, and we can learn from it too because we can say, okay, well, actually, my natural style is expressing itself differently than it should be. Like what I mean by that is that you might have a natural style, but it's actually you're not operating in the way that you naturally are. And if you can go to your natural style, you'll find yourself communicating and performing a lot better.
Hmm.
And uh, and that can be challenging sometimes depending on the environment. So that is the quick high level view of the disc profile. But if you understand it from a communicator's perspective, which is really helpful if you're working with clients, because then you can figure out, okay, does this person need more listings to make the decision, or do they need more action? Do they need to look at homes directly, or do they need time and space to think about it for a couple days?
Yeah. Well, something I was thinking about as you're talking is I was coaching somebody, very familiar person. Everybody in street text knows this person. I don't want to drop names, but this person, before they came to my coaching program, which was, probably about a year ago now, they believed they were a driver personality because they were very high energy, like, yeah, 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 just very high energy, smart, sharp, killing it in the business. At that time, when they came to my coaching, they were already doing well. They thought they were a driver at that time. After a while, I pointed out to them that they're like a high I and C, and they're like, "Oh, no, no, I'm a driver. I'm a driver." I was like, "No, I'm pretty sure." And they looked. They actually went back and found an assessment they did. They messaged me, and she's like, "You're right. I am a high C. I C, right? I C." She's like, "Oh my god, I'm so confused right now. I feel like my identity has been false this whole time, and it really screws with you. But the great thing is that she was like, she embraced it, and from that moment forward, started operating as an IC. Now, knowing that, she really started to use her strengths more, and just all kinds of clarity just came to her, and it just really helped her to remember that she's an IC. I think, there's a dominant and under pressure. Um, and I feel like maybe under pressure she could be a high D. When the going gets tough, she gets going. But naturally, she's not. And if you could operate in under your natural style more often, you're going to not only be more successful, but it's going to be so effortless. You're just gonna roll out. So that was one way that personality styles. One way that I can remember it helped myself and somebody. It's like, if you tell me you're a D and I'm trying to coach you as a D, you're gonna overthink stuff, and it's gonna confuse me. I'm gonna be like, why are you stuck? Why are you stuck? Why are you overthinking? Why are you overthinking? And then if we find out you're a high C, then it's like, oh well, duh, that makes sense, and it just
Oh, it makes
shifts.
so much sense.
It just
I
shifts
so I have a
gears.
You've shifted totally. So if you find yourself overthinking things, it may be that you're a high C, or in some cases you might be in a stressful circumstance where you're looking for added control that you normally wouldn't be. I have a friend, she's amazing, and she's a high D, like the but because she's such a high D, she will take on whatever is required. So there was a time where she was working in a community, a volunteer community, and she was leading this large program. And everybody was saying to her, like, wow, you're such a high I. And I, if you look at her personality profile, is the lowest.
Mm,
But it was literally she would embody what she needed
yeah,
because that's what the role required.
yeah,
And if she knows that, but she's a high D, she can actually find a way more fulfilling role somewhere else where she can work in the areas that she's naturally strong, like very strong at. And I just find that kind of thing very interesting. So it is very enlightening. So that's where you start. So you start with the sort of the profile, and you're also starting with the. It sounded like almost like the filter that we carry within us around how are we viewing the challenges or the opportunities in the marketplace today.
right, yeah. Yeah, so it's a very useful tool. I mean, I know people know about it and they kind of throw it around, but as far as like my clients, I tell them they really need to learn it. Like, it's not a suggestion. That's part of your homework. It's part of this program is that not only your own personality style and how you operate, but how to identify the personality styles. And that, I've taken it steps further in learning other personality styles and learning like attachment styles. And more people know it as in a romantic sense, like in a boyfriend girlfriend marriage kind of a. But like having an anxious attachment style, for example. if you have an anxious attachment style and that's how you are with your spouse, that's probably how you are with your leads, with your customers. You know, a very anxious attachment style, you always think they're going to leave you, you always think you're going to sabotage this relationship. Like it's funny how we treat one person, let's say our spouse, is probably how we treat everybody, and at some level, you know. So just, if you're in a people business, you should probably get to know people. And by that, I mean human behavior, psychology, you know, personality styles, I think, is the beginning of it. You know, I went down a path of so far that to I don't want to say master, but like I've gotten extremely familiar with mental health, just like narcissism, you know, like just those personality disorders, like anxiety, like OCD, like um, because knowing that stuff and being able to see it, even though I'm not a professional, I'm not a healthcare worker, whatever. But if I can understand and identify that somebody has OCD, like they actually have OCD tendencies, maybe not diagnosed, but they definitely operate with an OCD tendencies. It helps me a ton to coach them, because I know that if they don't do something right or the way I told them or whatever, they're gonna freak out. They're gonna avoid the calls. They're going to stress out. They're not gonna want to do it. They're gonna cancel coaching. Like, oh, it's not for me. It's not for me. And when really it doesn't need to be perfect, you know, like for that person. So that's, you know, along the lines of what I'm talking about. What's the first thing is really getting to know who I'm talking to, like really getting to know them, you know, so that they can hear me when I talk.
That is interesting. Now, attachment styles is brand new to me. I've never heard that before. Uh, I'd like to know more. And then also, it does make sense understanding concepts of mental health because, uh, yeah, I could see that being incredibly beneficial. So now, if you well, okay, let's take a second. Maybe you could explain a little bit more attachment styles, just because it's brand new to me. Just give me a high level.
Yeah, like uh, there's four different ones. I'll try to remember. Like there's a secure attachment style. That's the best one. That's the one everybody should strive for. It's you're secure, you're healthy, your emotions are healthy. You can see your relationship for what it is, not for what you're thinking or feeling. And you know it's not perfect, but you always deal with it well, just because of your secure attachment to it, your healthy attachment to it. Then there's anxious attachment, where it's like you're just anxious about things. Like if somebody doesn't text you back, you feel like they forgot about you, they're avoiding you. Oh no, they're going to break up with me. And like I said, this could be in business too. You know, if you got a hot lead and you talked to them yesterday and now they ghosted you the next day, some agents freak out. They're like, oh my God, I thought I had a listing, but I don't. And next thing you know, you find out like, oh, they were busy. They were in the hospital. Something happened, you know, like whatever. They didn't have power. I don't know. But an anxious attachment style person would freak out during that day. And hopefully they don't do anything about it, like send messages that say, hey, you know, I don't know what I did, but you know, you shouldn't ghost me, you know, whatever. People do that. Instead, knowing you're in an anxious attachment style and you start to freak out, you kind of start to go, okay, well, feelings are not facts. So I don't know that they're ghosting me. Let me wait until I know what happened and then deal with it. And let's say you never talk to them again. When you have healthy emotions and you understand that those feelings are because you're anxious attachment, you go, okay, like it is what it is. You know, never heard from them again, but that's okay. I have street text, so I have a bunch more leads that I can go talk to. You know? So there's secure and there's anxious attachment. There's fearful avoidant. You know, and that without getting too much into it, it's exactly what the name says, right? It's people fear something, so they just avoid it. It's the people that say, "Oh, you know what? This person likes me, but I don't think it's gonna work, so I'm just not gonna try." Right? It's like in business, realtors look at a FISBO and they go, FISBOs are a pain in the butt, and I don't even know what to say, and I'll just stick to my cold calling. when in reality it's like that person might like you a lot and trust you, and they might even be ready to list, but you'll never know because you feared, avoided, and moved on.
Hmm.
So there's anxious, secure, fearful, avoidant, and I think there's one more, and there's different spectrums, but those are like the main ones. I don't remember exactly the other one, but if you look it up, they're they're pretty simple. It's kind of like a disc assessment, but for attachment. Um,
That's fascinating. I find that really interesting because I can see that being really beneficial for somebody,
yeah,
especially in a work environment. If you
yeah,
can see that, it could probably like help a person understand. Oh, wait, so it's like getting a 365 analysis or 360 analysis, not 360, where you're like, oh, I didn't even know I did that, but I
yeah,
can see how that has probably lost maybe 20% of my conversions,
100%,
or I
100%.
could see how that could come across in this way when I'm communicating with a team in a team dynamic. So that is really really interesting. I would love to. I'm going to look into that one. That one's fascinating to
The
me.
fourth one is dismissive avoidant, and isolation, ambiguity, ambivalence, emotionally distant. So if you see somebody that's emotionally distant, let's say in your personal life or in business, somebody that's emotionally distant, when you meet them, what do you think? Like, oh, they're stuck up, or oh, they're not serious, or whatever. Like our mind just fills in the blank, like we're
Yeah,
psychic.
they have maybe you think they haven't bought in. They're like, okay, well, they're yes, yeah. I'm not
Yeah,
going to spend my time with that individual because they haven't committed.
because
Yeah,
they're not enthusiastic like I am.
yeah.
So imagine how many leads you have that they're just not emotionally there. They're distant emotionally. And if you're an um, expressive or a high I personality agent, and these people are like their attachment style is what did I say? Dismissive.
Dismissive.
Or let's say that they're a high C or an analytical. You guys are not in your natural styles. You're not going to get along. So one of you needs to adjust, and it's not going to be them for sure.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. This brings me to another style, which is helpful as well. So some people are naturally. Have you heard of the? Uh, I forgot what they're called. It's like okay, creative, refiner, advancer, executor.
I've heard those terms in that sense, but I don't know much about it. I've never dove into it.
Okay, so these ones are kind of like your um, your natural strengths within the um, within uh, how you process ideas essentially, or how you come up with ideas. So the creator is that person who just seems to have like 100 ideas every day. You might be
Mm,
hanging out with them and they're like, hey, let's go do this, let's go do this, let's go do this. They just come up with ideas, boom 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 boom. Maybe they're thinking, maybe they're the person on Twitter who's tweeted every idea they've had, and all those ideas are now in existence. They just seem to come up with really like so many ideas, but they're not necessarily refined ideas. They just are ideas. And then you have the refiner. The refiner is the person who is really good at thinking through the problems of ideas. They will look at things and they can't help it. Sometimes they put in that very critical perspective. And then you have the person who is the advancer. The advancer is like the Steve Jobs. So the advancer is that person who sees brilliant ideas for what they are. They can get past the refiner's resistance, and they look at something like, oh man, if I bring this to market, I can see the impact this will have. Or if I can help this person do this, they will unlock their potential because maybe they're a brilliant artist, but their whole family is the refiners, and their family saying, no, get a secure job, go get a law degree, do this stuff, and
mm,
literally they're dying inside.
yeah.
But the advancer comes along and says, no, I see exactly what you're doing. Actually, you are brilliant. You need to continue pursuing this. And then the executor are those individuals who are just high at getting things done. They love piecemeal work. They love stuff where it's just like job done, job done, job done. Just give me a task. I will eat that up all day, every day, and just they live off that. And so if you know the work style of somebody, whether they're a creative refiner, advanced, or executor, and people have got combinations of all of the above, um, it really will help. So if you find somebody who's a high executor and you're really good at the advancer side, that's a great combination because you can say, here's brilliant ideas, and you can give it to them, and then they will start to actually make it happen in reality. If you combine yourself with a refiner, that's a really good QA person, like quality control, quality assurance. So they can look at things and make sure that you're bringing it out. But where the friction can come out is if you have a high C, high refiner. So you have like a super analytical, detail oriented individual
Mm-hmm.
who is also very critical, and you put them beside a high I idea, like visionary person, so expressive, bold words, but doesn't have the analytical strength. That is not a healthy combination, because the high I is literally thriving off of ideas, and the
Mm-hmm.
high C is thriving off of killing ideas. And so you see where that could become a very, very dangerous dynamo. So if you can figure that out early, you can then you can actually be skillful in how you partner with people, because you can say, okay, this person is very much in that dynamic, and so I'm going to find myself an advancer who can then balance out this high C refiner,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
And
going to partner with that advancer
yeah,
because there's going to be ideas that are going to be gold, and I need to make sure they get across the line. And
and
so,
I think that's why a coach, an advancer mentality coach, is
yes,
what people need. It's because regardless of what personality style you are, because that's what I do basically. Is I People come to me, they have ideas or they're drivers, like they're ready to go work. They're just like ignorance on fire, right? I've been doing this all week, 8 hours a day, and I go, yeah, but or whatever. But it wasn't a good idea. You did a good job. You worked a lot, but you probably shouldn't, door knock vacant homes or whatever. But yeah, I see what you're saying, and that's all. It all comes down to what people, getting to know people, human behavior, getting more and more familiar with just how people operate. So uh, that's it's a very fascinating topic to me.
yeah,
Overall,
I think if you can layer those three um, those three profiles over top of one another, it gives you a very insightful way that can help you communicate a lot better to who it is that you're working with. Because if you're
Mhm.
working with someone who is stuck on, and here's the reality, the high C analytical refiner, what they're really after is security. And if you
Mhm.
know that, they're just looking for tried, true, proven, done. If you know that, you can actually come to them as a high I by preparing by doing your work a little bit, and the diligence, and just showing them, instead of showing them 3 properties in the same market, show them 10 properties in the same market. Give them a little bit more data, and then show them case study after case study after case study of where you've seen the outcome that you believe is inevitable based on the strategy you put in place. And that high C analytical refiner will be checking off every box. And they'll be saying, yes, let's execute this and make this possible.
Yeah.
And so that's where knowing the personality. But then if you find a high I client who's very expressive, that will literally kill the relationship if you
Mhm.
came in with that approach.
Yeah.
It will, instead meet them where they're at. If they're super excited about the deal, get so excited about them. I'm so happy for you. This is so fun. I can't believe we get to do this together,
Yeah.
because that is going to match them where they are, how they communicate. Uh, and it's going to have such a positive impact in the overall relationship of that deal.
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly. And,
it's
and and that's happening every single day, all day long, with all of like street text clients, my clients, just people. It's it. And the crazy part is most people have no idea it's happening. And they're uh, unnecessarily stressing out, not knowing what to do, like just trying to figure things out, trying all these different just strategies and tactics and changing, pivoting. And it's like, you don't need to. You just need to know who you're talking to. That's it.
Yeah. And now, okay, so let's say you're working with someone and they they come to you and you realize, okay, they're saying things along this line. I'm really concerned about the future. It seems like foreclosures are on the horizon. The uh, I'm looking into the reports and looking at what's happening with the news, and uh, I just don't feel very. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in the future? How do you respond to that?
I would want to know. I always want to know is where they're getting their facts from. Like, where did you learn of this? Okay, is it a reliable source? Did you do the numbers yourself? Did you Is this macro or micro? Like, is this your market or is this nationally? Is this your office or is this the county that you're in, the region that you're in? Is this your team or is this the office? Right? So it's like big scale, little scale, all the way right down to like, what are you doing though? Because our home's still selling? Yeah. Okay. What are you doing about it? Like, how many have you sold? How many do you think are going to sell in the next quarter? And how many of them do you want to sell?
So you bring it back. So you're bringing it back, and you're basically giving perspective by broadening the lens and
Hmm.
saying, okay, you're looking at a specific type of situation. You might have data that proves that that's potentially possible. But if you scale up a little bit, you might find that that's not the full story.
Right.
Now, and then you're bringing it back to the outcome, the goal. Like, what are you working to achieve? I think about that too, in the sense that I feel like anybody who's growing as fast as the market is doing something wrong. Technically, you're doing something really well, because you're
Yes.
growing as fast as the market. That means you're there, you're making stuff happen. But if you're growing as fast as the market, where's the extra that's coming from you? And uh, and so it's the same thing in a down market. Where's the extra that's coming from you? It doesn't really matter if the market's going down. You can still grow your business in that environment. It
Right.
just depends on are you being strategic with the actions?
I always
So
I always tell agents, like, it doesn't matter what the market's doing. That has nothing to do with your business. Like, it's very related, very closely related, directly related. But as far as your business, it doesn't matter what's happening over here, up, down, sideways. You know, there even in the worst markets, there was a ton of homes sold still. You know, so redirecting
yeah,
the
that I mean, and it's funny. I saw that stat recently, and I thought it was interesting. Maybe we just talked about this. I'm not sure, but another time. Do you remember do you know the year where the most real estate uh, sales were?
Yeah, I think we did talk about it. It was like, I want to say like 5.1 million, and the slowest was like 4.9 million nationwide in the United States. And when people hear that, they go, "Oh, okay." Like, where was I? Like, well, you were watching the news. That's where you were, you
Yeah,
know.
it's not a crazy difference. And
No,
then,
it's
but also is really fascinating. If you look in the market, in the slowest market, the number of transactions per agent in that time was actually more than the number of transactions per agent on average in the busiest market. And the reason for that is because a lot of agents leave the business.
right, and
And so,
nobody
and so
misses them.
yeah, so the ones who are treating it as a business, who
Keep
are
going.
keep going, and guess what? Their business grows, and then
Exactly.
they thrive when the market shifts, because it always shifts. Like every couple of years, it's shifting.
And then
And
everybody else is asking, I don't understand how they're doing more, and the market's so terrible. Like, but how are they selling more? And they get so frustrated, and I think it's pretty crazy to watch from the sidelines, you know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's keep on this journey. So now let's say you've helped them, you understand their personality profile, you understand how they communicate, you've helped them see a picture that is um, realistic as far as what the opportunity really is for them if they apply themselves. What's next?
Uh, I think creating a plan, like knowing step by step what they're going to be doing, like time management, their calendar, what's on it, what activity, how they're going to do it, how are they going to track and measure it so that they know they're doing it and doing it well. Um, so the plan of action, you know, the steps, step by step, everything, and the accountability. Like, okay, that's a great plan, but if you don't do it, then what? And who do we need to involve to make sure this gets done?
That's a big one.
Hmm.
That's a big one. And then how often do you meet with your clients?
Usually it's weekly, 30 minutes.
That's perfect. So then you get a weekly check-in on accountability.
Right, right. And I've tried everything. I've tried doing an hour session, 15-minute sessions, once a week, twice a week, like every day, you know. I've tried all kinds of different ways. And weekly 30-minute is like perfect.
The sweet spot.
Yep.
Yeah. I joke about this, but it's true. I've seen your calendar. It's very, very busy, very full. And obviously it's working. It's working very well. So when you're I'm just curious about this for yourself. What do you know what your core values are?
My core values are results, are proof, like tangible, um, that people, I guess, when I coach somebody, I don't want them to feel good. You know, you've probably heard me say stuff like, you know, there's no hype over here. There's no, I'm not here to motivate you and to get you all hyped up. That's not me. I'm not gonna, you know, talk your ear off and be all excited on camera. That's just not me. It's my core value is you're my client, you're coming to me for a result, and we're going to get it, period. And it's going to be measurable. You're going to be able to hold it up and go, here's my result, here's my goal, here's what we did, and now this is what I have, right? And that's basically along the lines of my core values.
Yeah. And that's interesting. It seems like one of the strengths you have is you said at the beginning of the call yourself, you went to that micro training and you came back and you felt like you had the structured understanding of what to do. And it
Yeah,
seems that's something I've observed from you is that it doesn't take long, but when you have a conversation, you leave feeling much more clear about what matters and what's important. And it seems like it eliminates the clutter.
yeah,
And you end up, if there's like an analogy, it's almost like the room of the mind is now swept clean. And
yeah.
it's
And
like there's a
I,
couple boxes and they're neatly in order.
yeah, and I feel like I get that a lot from my clients. They're oftentimes I get a text or message right away after the first session, and I can sense the clarity. It's not hype. It's not like, oh my God, I'm so excited. You know, it's nothing like that. It's like, wow, that first session, I don't know what you did, but I am like calm, confident. I know exactly what to do. It's exactly what you're saying. It's removing the clutter, having a plan, a vision, and you know, not. I think sometimes we in our attempt to declutter, we just put more clutter. You know, we I don't know. So yeah, it's that's exactly what happens. And then that conversation allows the coaching to begin. Because if I don't have that conversation first, and if I don't know their personality style first before that, coaching's never going to begin. It's going to be the same conversation week after week. Why didn't you do it? What's happening? Why are you stuck? You know, the same thing over and over. And
It's
sometimes,
funny.
sometimes it happens during coaching. It's where I got to go back. Let's go back to that first conversation and have it again. You know, it's kind of like when
Yeah.
realtors have to go get a price reduction.
Yeah, totally. It makes sense. Like so often you hear somebody and you hear what they want. They'll want something along the lines of, I want to know the secret of what that guy's doing over there because I can tell he's crushing it. Maybe he's number one in my market, or maybe she's like absolutely dominating and she's got something figured out. What's her secret? I want to know
Hmm.
her secret. And so there's a part of them that's thinking, okay, I want to be coached on the secret sauce because I know there's something and I got to pay a little extra for it, and maybe
Yeah,
I'll get the secret.
and
Or
sorry, to interrupt. And that's when people come to coaching. They go, "Hey, I want you to coach me to do this, 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 and this." And I go, "Okay, is that what you need, though?" Right? Like in my head. But it's
totally, because they've got the solution already planned out in their mind.
yeah.
And they just know that the secret is that the grass is greener over there, and if they could just get to that field of grass, it'll be better. And or they'll come into this, and they'll think to themselves, a you know, the it's not that they don't know what to do, they just need accountability. That's all it is. It's just I need accountability. If I can just have accountability, then I'll be successful. I'll just be successful. And usually it's neither of those first two things. Usually what it is it's exactly what you're describing now, which is the person are really like it's a mind set. It's a way that they're viewing something. And if they saw that the grass that they're standing on is actually very good and they can water it and that they can start to nurture it, they will start to find that they're having the results that they're looking for in their life. This I was reading this autobiography of this guy, and it's a very fascinating autobiography. He was born in the Middle East, sort of uh, late or early 1900s, and his dad had painstakingly taken what was very dry, arid ground and had planted fig trees, and had over the years nurtured them and watered them until they became established. And lo and behold, 20, 30 years later, it looks like this lush, beautiful area. And so at some point or other, a foreign, stronger army shows up and decides that they're going to occupy this place because it looks so green and fertile. But what they don't know the backstory is that the reason it looks so green and fertile is because this guy's dad has done so much work to create this new space. Long story short, they're forcibly relocated to another area where literally it's just again you're back to bare ground. But that mentality of knowing that the grass is greener where you water it, it didn't leave them. So it was devastating that they lost everything, but they started it again. And so they started by, starting with a garden, cultivating, investing, and doing the same process. And it doesn't take long before you can turn a place that looks like dry and arid and it's back to green and prosperous. And I think that for anybody who's listening, uh, something that I've observed Gabriel do very, very, very well is uh, help people frame things in a way that gives uh, gives them a new perspective. And sometimes, if you look at the fruit over the next 6 months, that perspective is the thing that set the seed that changed the results that happened 6 months later.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I, um, well, I was just thinking as you're talking about SEO, right? SEO is so important, yet people don't do it because there's nothing there tomorrow, and it's like you could literally explain it to some people. This is how it works, and they go, "Wow, that's very interesting. Let me run a Google ad." Like, it's like, all right, cool. But I guess it's like you say, the grass is greener where you water it. So you want to water over there? Go ahead. I'll be right here waiting for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Most great success stories, it's like that Steve Jobs quote, right? Most great like overnight success stories are a 10-year story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And But the cool thing is in life, time takes care of itself. So if we are doing the thing that we know we need to do every day, it won't take long before we are exactly where we were hoping to be,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
we just keep moving forward. We just keep taking those right action steps.
You just have to trust in your plan and trust in yourself that you're going to do your part, and everything else is going to do its part, right? Your team, your marketing, the internet, you, everything. You just have to trust in that. There's a I'll I'll try to give you like super short version, okay? You know who Chuck Yeager is?
No.
He's the guy that broke the sound barrier, okay? So, let me give you this is one of my favorite stories ever. I'll give you the short version. So Chuck Yeager, he's a pilot. He's like, I'm gonna break the sound barrier, and people are like, "What the hell does that mean? Like, what do you mean?" So he explains. He builds a team, gets all these scientists, whatever, gets the plane that's gonna do it. They go out into the desert. He takes off. He's flying. He's like, "Okay, all right, team." Like they're all monitoring him from the ground, right? Computers and checking. He's communicating with them whatever's happening on his gauges on his dashboard. He's like, okay, we're ready, here we go. And he starts to speed up, and he's like at 900 miles an hour or whatever the sound barrier is, right? um, and as he starts to get faster and faster, the gauges on the plane start to basically warn him, like, you're going too fast. And he keeps contacting his team. This is what's happening. This is how I feel. The plane's shaking. The gauges are like maxed out. And the scientists are like, nope, you're good. Everything we see on our end, you're fine. You're safe. Keep going. Keep going. More, accelerate more. He's like, okay. So he accelerates more. The plane's going crazy. And then all of a sudden, nothing. The scientists are like, oh, shit. Like, well, should we go home? Or like, now what? Right? And all of a sudden, boom. And they're like, he comes back on the radio. He's like, 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. And the scientists are like, holy crap. They celebrate. And it's, imagine if he listened to the gauges on the plane, because the plane is going crazy, because it's going so fast. It's pushing through the resistance of time and space that the gauges don't even know what's happening. The plane don't even know what's happening. But the scientists, the people monitoring the weather, the airplane, they know. I don't know what kind of scientists would know this, but they know about the space, and that they're like, nope, you're good. Nothing should happen if you keep going. So keep going, and he did, and broke through, and
That's
that
so powerful.
right. That's a true story. It's Chuck Yeager. It's people can look that up, and it's one of my favorite stories. And I just think about that all the time with people that are scared, and they're like, I don't know what's happening, and I'm like, nope, you're good, keep going, and eventually they get that sonic boom, and they're like, wow, we're there. I had the breakthrough, and I go, yep, now just keep going.
Okay, that's crazy. So this how often do we throttle our performance in and prevent ourselves from achieving what we are truly capable of, because the dials, those internal dials, are are going off the chart. And if we had somebody around us like Gabriel who could then say, "You're okay. You're actually making
Mhm,
great progress. The
mhm,
numbers are working. Everything's good. You have the ability to invest more in what you're doing." Like this is imagine what the growth outcome of that can be. Just
yeah,
fast forward, because everything is compound. If if you know anything about compound, it's truly remarkable. So this brings me like I made me think of another story. Do you know who Dave Brailsford is?
mm,
Okay, I wouldn't. He's uh, the head coach of cycling UK, and why this is important is that not that long ago, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. And and so he set this wildly crazy, hugely ambitious goal, and he said, I'm gonna train the first cyclist, British cyclist, to win the Tour de France. That's his goal. And what he realized, or what he did, sorry, I'm losing my voice here. What he did is he actually started to work on their belief, and he's the first coach ever, professional cycling team coach ever, to bring in a full time psychiatrist to help their athletes, because he realized that the number one reason, he called it, like, he has this beautiful diagram. It's this triangle, and the reason I know about this is because I actually found a video that was recorded when he was like coaching his team, and I don't even know if anybody knows about this video, but I found it on the internet, and he's painting this triangle, and he calls it the triangle of change. And he says, he looks at the one side, and he says, okay, you got your training plan. Are you doing everything that you're supposed to be doing? Are you putting in the work? That's side one. Side two is, it's something like that. I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but the third side was the most important, and it was, do you believe that you can achieve the goal that you set out to? Because that was the thing. Because nobody's going to put 100% of their potential in, like you talk about that pilot, if they don't believe that they can. And so that's where he would work with his athletes on. Since coaching, they won their first Tour de France in 2012. They then went to dominate the Olympics, like won most of the medals, and they've since won, I think, like 7 or 8 of the like Tour de France's since then.
Yeah.
It's the most mind-boggling record of any cycling team ever.
Wow.
And yeah, wow, because he started to focus on belief. The it's interesting, back to overcoming our own challenges. So um I'll tell you a personal story about that. So I am a cyclist, so I follow cycling, so I'm interested in it. And I was working on my own personal goals. This was about 5 years ago, and I was training, and I was doing these essentially these training efforts, and training efforts are based around your FTP, so your functional threshold power. And I knew my FTP was like pretty high. Well, I mean, reasonably high for an amateur cyclist. I was pushing around, um, 300 something watts. And so I decided I'm going to do this training program. I need to test my FTP. So I get on the bicycle, and I do 330 watts for 30 minutes. And if you know what that means, it's essentially, you're setting your pace is around that 4-minute mile. Like if you're a runner, like it's fast. It's So I'm putting in a hard effort, and I get off the bike, and I remember feeling like a little bit of pain in my chest, and not thinking anything of it. 2 days later, I stood up out of my chair, and I just get dizzy, and I fall back down, and I sit down, and my chest is still hurting. And I'm like, that was weird. And I'm feeling a little out of breath going up the stairs. And so I end up going to a walk-in clinic just to have a look. Maybe I should just just get assessed. So I go get assessed, and he says, you need to go to the emergency hospital, and somebody needs to drive you, and you need to go there this second. And so I go to the emergency. They do a test on me, and all of a sudden, I'm literally lying in the cardiac surgery ward. I got people beside me who need to be there. And I'm thinking, this can't be happening. I shouldn't be here right now. I have a 1-year-old daughter. I'm young, I'm healthy. Like, this doesn't make sense. Why am I here? And they did like an echocardiogram scan, and they found a weird thing. And it's just like all symptoms are pointing towards heart attack. A month goes by, and I don't have a family physician at this time. So I don't have anybody giving me any of this information back to me in a way, so that the hospital's trying to do it. And a month goes by, and I make it like, I don't know if this will make sense to people, but I had a realization, which is, I'm doing these ultrasounds and all these things, but I can either worry about this, and I can kind of like move towards it, or I can believe that I'm healthy and strong. My heart's healthy and strong because the doctors don't seem to have a solution for me. And so I don't want to live in anxiety. And so I'm going to choose the latter and I'm going to walk in that direction and train in that direction. And I have been ever since. And now I'm back and I'm competing and I'm cycling again. But there's a point where I had to make a decision. Here I am in the airplane, the dials are going crazy. And I'm thinking, but I've been in a plane crash before. I'm on these cycling races and I'm putting myself to the limit, but I can tell that I've got uh, a limiter set.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting 100% of my potential in. I'm playing it safe. I'm like at 90%.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just not hitting the numbers I used to be able to. And then I realized it's like I'm not going to ever hit those numbers unless I take that limiter off. And so, about a month ago, I just made that decision. I said, okay, I'm removing that limiter. And guess what's happening? I'm seeing some of the biggest gains of cycling and like performance improvement I've seen
Yeah.
since 5 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been very fun and very exciting. And I feel healthier than ever. And the uh it's hard sometimes to do that when you've experienced something that feels life threatening, you know?
Oh yeah. And business can feel life threatening sometimes.
Yeah, and business is not life threatening.
No, and it feels like, I mean, some people literally come to coaching sessions like the world is under attack by aliens and we're doomed. And then after a conversation, they're like, "Oh, cool, everything's fine now." All of a sudden, now I, I'm not kidding. Like I have these conversations all the time, just like that. It's where people's dials are going crazy. They're stressing. By the end of the call, they're like, "Oh, cool. Okay, let me go back to work." They're just, let me keep pushing. Let me keep going. So
Yeah.
wow, that's awesome, man. Good for you. That's exciting to know when you're breaking your own barriers and you are causing new amazing results for yourself. Like that's the feeling everybody wants right there.
Yeah, and it I love progress. There's a fun progress in life. I think is this cool thing. I don't know. Like I ski a lot, and it's just fun when you go out and you go to the mountains and you feel like, oh, I can see the improvement. And
Hmm.
business is one of the most quantifiable things we can do. And so it's really easy to measure progress, but we have to measure it on the right things. We can't measure it always on the outcomes that we sometimes measure it on, because there will be times in our life where we won't see quantifiable outcomes progressing. And so we have to measure our progress and other stuff. What am I doing to improve my activities? What am I doing to improve my mindset? What am I doing to improve my business's systems? What am I doing to improve uh, my business brand? What am I doing to improve my relationship with my existing clients or my past clients? And then you can start to measure it, and you measure it on the really healthy things like that. The other outcomes start taking care of themselves, and you look and you're like, oh my goodness, that stuff's all growing again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that comes down to a conversation of skills versus what's the word? It's like I saw somebody on the internet, I think it was Facebook, somebody asked, "What are the most important skills in real estate?" And there was very interesting people's answers because most of them were nothing you can measure. It was like motivation, it was like rapport building. It was like just all these answers that are like, those are not skills. You guys are all very confused. Skills are like measurable, like presenting, that's a skill. Like I don't know, just skills, selling, right? Selling, skills versus everything else. And I think people are very confused about that.
Yeah, that's really profound. So what would you say the most important skills are that you've observed in your years of coaching?
I think, I guess, if I had to say one, um, I guess, probably knowing personality styles, since we've been talking about it so much, I feel like, and not just like, oh, I know the disc assessment inside and out. It's like, no, like your people skills, your ability to identify people and do something with it, uh, like put them in a certain category, maybe when you're talking to them. Um, Probably, I guess I would say execution, um, taking an idea and making it happen, not just thinking about it. Accountability. It's not really a skill set, but it's you can measure it. You can measure your accountability by your actions. I would say time management. Time management is a big issue that people just overlook. Um, so there's a lot of stuff. I guess the answer is hard because it really depends on the person. Like, what's the most important skill this person needs to have versus this person? Because you could be a great salesperson, but if you're one, people think like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, then you're not going to do it. Or, if you don't believe in what you're selling, then you're not going to do it. You could be a great salesperson selling cars, and then you move over to real estate and you're terrible because it's not the same for you individually, right? So it's a very hard question. I think that's why there's so much confusion around it too. It's like,
So this is why actually the sales one I touched on for a second. This is why I think real estate is such an amazing career for people who are naturally promoters,
mhm,
who are natural salespeople, because great sales is simply helping somebody else clarify what it is that they're looking for and work towards getting it, so that you're helping paint them a picture. You're just helping them make the choice that um, they were wanting to make,
yeah,
but you're helping them get there. And what's beautiful about real estate is you get access to the entire inventory of the entire marketplace. And so you don't get to sell a car that's on a lot. You get to, nothing against like car salespeople at all. I don't, don't mean in that way. I mean, but you get access to the entire inventory. So you can help a person figure out, okay, what is it you're looking for? And here's a place that I think might be exactly what you're looking for.
hmm,
And you can help get them into that door, which is for many people where they're going to have so many dreams and experiences and family moments and memories. And they're going to have, we just had Thanksgiving. These are, this is a space that's very important for a lot of people, and you get to help them. And so I think the misunderstanding is that I think people don't like somebody trying to convince them to do something they don't want to do. That's what they don't like. And I would agree with that. It's not about, it's about uncovering what a person's trying to do, and then finding what it is that they're looking for in the marketplace and getting it to them.
yeah. I just had a group meeting last week with a few agents. It was like 10 agents, and I was going around asking questions. And one lady said, "Well, I just hate cold calling. I hate making my calls, even people she knows. She just hates calling." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "Because I just I don't like asking them for business." I go, "So stop doing it. Just call people and say hi. Why don't you ask them how they're doing instead?" And she was like, she was confused that a business coach is telling her to stop selling. And it's like, why do you keep asking people if they want to buy a house if they don't? Just so we got deep into that conversation, but basically she left that table excited to call people because she does like talking to people. She likes to keep in touch with friends, family, past clients, but that pressure of asking for business was killing it for her. I told her, don't ask anybody ever. Let it come up naturally because
Oh, that's so profound and so simple. But
yeah,
you're right.
yeah,
It changes everything. All of a sudden, you're out there and you're building relationships and community and connection. And that's at the end of the day what so many people are craving right now.
and
And then
that's why
who wouldn't refer your business if you're the person they're in relationship with?
exactly. And that's kind of
Yeah.
along the lines of, we started this session talking. We dove in about personality styles and mental health, and like knowing people. And I tell my clients, you need to just take a step back and just be human. Like, just care about people, and um, pursue your own interest, your own genuine interest. Like, don't worry about doing that thing because you think there's a lot of people to network with. People invite me all the time to business networking functions, and I'm like, nah, I'm not. I'm good, thank you. I'd rather go to the car show. You know, I I just I'm a firm believer. Like, if you want to network, like, for business, you should just go do whatever you enjoy doing. You like bowling, go bowl every day, and I promise you're gonna meet clients. If you like fishing, go fishing. You're gonna bump into people, or whatever. It's just a matter of taking a step back and just remember that you're in a people business, and if people don't like you, you're not gonna have any business.
Yeah, case in point, I've met some really cool people cycling because there's always
Yeah,
community events, and
exactly.
every community you go to, if you're traveling, there's cycling places that you can basically call up the local shops and say, "Hey, where's a group ride?" And then you just join it. And
And
I actually ended up meeting like some really cool people in similar businesses as a result of a cycling, even speak being invited to speak at conferences as a result. So you just never know.
And I feel like regardless of what your business is, if you just surround yourself with um, with people that you get along with, right? Going back to that saying, your vibe is your tribe. Like, don't worry about anything else. Just go and do you and be happy and focus on feeling good. Well, what about sales skills and all that other stuff you talk about? Well, that is important when you have the traffic and the clients, and it's coming in faster than you can handle it. Okay, now you need to learn how to manage your time, be efficient, how to present well so that you can get the business on the first try, All that stuff is still important. But if you're out there forcing business, it's going to make all that other stuff even harder.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. So start first by if this could sum it up, start first by learning yourself, getting clarity about how you think and how you operate, your
Hmm.
own strengths. Then you can figure out, okay, what are the skills that I need to work on? And one of those skills is actually starting to understand those same models so you can apply them when you're in the workplace, and you can start to better understand people. And from there, you can start to build your business to the point where you are so busy that you need to work on. You're. I have a mentor. Had a mentor, super nice guy, Lance Schaefer, and he always talked about leveling up problems. He's like, problems don't go away; they just get better. So because as you're building your business, if at the beginning everything feels like a new problem, but at some point those things don't feel like problems anymore because they're systemized, they're organized. You've got a great admin person. You go to the next level. Suddenly you're in the next level and you're encountering new challenges,
Yeah.
and that's a really good place to be. Like whenever you have a problem, like uh, one of the problems we'll hear a lot is I have too many leads.
Yeah.
That's a really good place to be. That's a really good problem. Would you prefer the opposite? You know, and and so then it's like, okay, what do I got to do? I got to level up my systems. I got to level up my actions. But too many people will try to jump into that problem before they've mastered the other ones. And so you this is also why I think working with yourself is so brilliant, because you can sort of distill it and help a person understand, this week I'm going to focus on this thing because that's actually what's going to move the needle the most.
Yeah. That's, I mentioned that I have like 20, 21 topics that I cover, but they're not in any order. It's not. When I share that with people, I feel like they think it's going to be in that order, or it's like, just know that anytime we talk, we're talking about one of these topics, and we'll go into one and come out of one. We'll go into the other one and come out of it, because it's all about where you are. Like, where are you specifically? So, it's that's coaching. That's I have a I'm always trying to I always try to just kind of like help people understand what coaching is and what coaching isn't, you know, because coaching is it's not cookie cutter. It's not, okay, go do this, 1 through 10. That's more like training. Coaching is super deep mindset shifting, making hard changes. And I always say, it's change isn't hard. It's human behavior that's hard to change. You can make the change right now, but the human behavior, your reaction to it, your um, resistance, your ability to keep it going when it feels wrong because you've never done it. That's coaching. It's like the Chuck Yeager, you know, that whole thing.
Yes, 100%, 100%. So I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I could keep like literally you've sparked another 5 things I want to ask you about, but I know you're a busy man and we can go on this forever. And so I think I know I'm going to have you on again.
I
Like
hope so. Yeah,
actually
I would love to.
uh
I think we have very enlightening conversations, and I'm very happy to do it with you.
yeah.
So definitely, please, let's do it again.
Yeah, I really enjoy these. I love connecting with you, man. So yeah, again, super appreciate it. And yeah, this was good. This was really good.
Cool, awesome. Thank you so much for doing it.
Let's go.